Hello and welcome to Leading with Connection. I'm your host, Charlotte Jamison, and today I'm joined by Natalie Knight, a registered psychologist and the founder of Revive Psychology, as well as the co-founder of Illume Partners. With over 25 years of experience across both clinical and organizational psychology, Natalie works at the intersection of human behavior and leadership, supporting individuals through stress, burnout, and trauma, while also helping organisations build psychologically safe and high-performing workplaces. Through her work, she's seeing a growing impact of dysfunctional leadership, unsafe workplace cultures, and increasing psychosocial hazards, and how these are not only affecting individual mental health, but also undermining team performance and organisational outcomes. So today we're going to explore why psychological safety is becoming such a critical foundation for leadership, connection, and building truly high-performing teams. Natalie, welcome.
Lovely to be here.
Well, I'm so excited for this chat. So let's hit it off. What does leading with connection mean to you?
We know how it feels to have a relationship where we feel connected. And we also know how it feels when we don't feel connected. And I think that's the essence. So thinking about how that connection evolves. That connection evolves through consistency in the relationship. It evolves through showing up and messaging things consistently. It's trust. It's underpinned by trust. And so connection leadership is really a leadership style that's authentic. It's transparent. It's all these really nice words that keeps us feeling safe. If we really want to think about the biology piece around connection and leadership, it keeps us in our safe zone. We feel that we can tap into our creativity and our flow, and we're relaxed and we work better and we laugh and we smile and all these great things that we want to be doing in the workplace, in comparison to a relationship that we don't feel that connection. And, you know, when we're doing leadership training, it's the first thing we kick off with. Think about a leadership relationship you've had in the past that you would say was a really great relationship. And then think about one that wasn't so great. How did it make you feel? What did that leader do? What did they say? What didn't they do?
I do that very same exercise as well, because I think it's a really brilliant way for people just to reflect, because we just carry on our lives, and not often do we sit down and we hold the mirror up and we reflect on, well, what have I been exposed to in the past, or what has worked for me? How has that made me feel? And how do I want to lead? What's my intention here? And I think it's a really useful activity for people to go through. And then of course, what gets in the way of me building this connection with the team? You know, what for me stops that intention from becoming true? And that's often, that beautiful light bulb moment where people are like, oh, so I'm human.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I often say to leaders, especially the emerging leaders and the ones doing the courses, as a leader, you don't have to know all the answers. It's okay not to know the answers. It's not okay not to find out.
Yeah. And I love that you've put that responsibility in there, because I don't know if you've read Margaret C. Andrews' book, Leading Self to Lead Others. I think that's what it's called. And she talks about an example in her Harvard Business course where somebody explains that they have a boss who wrote an email and said, I'm in a bad mood. It titled it, I'm bad mood today. And underneath the description of the email said, I can't remember specifically, but it was basically saying, I'm in a bad mood, so therefore I'm going to be a jerk. And I'm not accountable for the bad. Yeah. And she was just like, we love this awareness. You're in a bad mood. Yep. Tick. But you can't just leave it there. You have a responsibility to manage that that bad mood appropriately.
You know,
Yeah.
we show up with responsibilities, and each person in a team has a responsibility to manage self, and our leaders have a responsibility to manage self. I love that you say the intention piece, because the intention can be for the leader, it can be for the person leading themselves. You do not have to be a leader to lead yourself effectively and efficiently. And that intention piece, as we had that little discussion before,
Yeah.
you know, really sets the ongoing expectations in a relationship. And so if we are able as leaders to message our intention, and our team understands that we care and we're genuinely there to help support them, and we will go the extra mile in order to ensure that we set ourselves up for success, whatever that might look like. There's going to be days where we are under pressure. There's going to be days where things don't go to plan. There's going to be days where we're human and we haven't quite regulated ourselves in a way that we might then have to step back and learn from. But if our team understands that our intention's always the same, no matter what those behaviours are day to day, that's how you can have those raw conversations. Without that intention being really transparent, those conversations won't happen. People will go away and make assumptions on behaviour, and it's the assumptions that will then result in the breakdown of the relationship. So the intention piece helps us make generous assumptions, which is beautiful by Brene Brown in her Braving acronym. And it's like that generous assumption is, I know my leader really does have my back, and I know they really care. So I'm just going to wait and see what was going on for them that day. And straight away when we make that generous assumption, guess what? Our whole body changes. It goes from, I don't want to know that, I don't want to go to work anymore, and I'm not engaged, and blah, 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 to I'm just going to let this ride out, and I'm going to have a chat with so-and-so, and I'm going to see where they were that day.
It flips into that biology piece, the protection mode or the connection mode. And that happens without our awareness. But we know if somebody's having those unhelpful behaviors towards us, protection mode, that's a threat.
It's like the sixth sense. It's the gut feel. You feel it as you walk in a room. And straight away, everything just goes boom into either you fight, you flight, you freeze, you fawn. There's like so many of them these days, flock, feed. There's heaps of them. And as soon as we go into there, it's essentially because we have two things going on. We either don't feel safe or we don't have a choice. So no matter where we are, if we go into one of our Fs, our survival sort of protection mechanisms, they're the two questions we have to be able to ask ourselves. Am I safe? Do I have choice? And if you don't have those, you will go into your Fs. If you do have those, we go into the beautiful 8 Cs. Connection, clarity, confidence, calmness. There's so many beautiful C's, which is basically, as you probably know, our flow state, where we work our best.
Yeah. And so it sounds so easy, doesn't it? So what, in your experience, what have you seen that really works for leaders to build this connection?
Look, first and foremost, override our natural wiring to problem solve and actually listen. Show up with a curious mindset, curious for behavior, curious for what people bring to your table. They're sitting at your table because they have expertise. Now, how you tap into that expertise will be about the culture you create. Really being curious and just being able to listen, ask the questions, create the conversations. 3 questions that create really robust conversations, whether you do it at the end of the week or at the end of the day, is what did we do well? What did we learn? And what would we do different? So
Beautiful.
You start to see that Carol Dweck's mindset stuff coming out. And so when we think about connection, we know there's intention. We know there's consistent messaging and showing up. Builds trust. Because for trust to be built, it has to be consistent.
Yeah. So that listening piece is, again, very, very simple, but actually quite hard to do, especially if I'm a fixer. So I like to, fix everybody's problems. So I really need to make sure that I don't go into that default of listening to fix. Those questions were great. Do you want to repeat those questions?
What are we doing well? There's always something we're doing well, right?
Yeah.
What are we learning, or what have we learned? And what would we do better?
Yeah.
There are 2 questions as a leader to really help to get people feeling engaged. And that is, how do you feel? What do you think? These things are really simple. What do you think about it? Those 2 questions will change every conversation, especially in change, as, that's your area of expertise. The resistance to change is usually because people are not understanding what it means to them.
Yep.
You know, am I going to look competent? I don't, but no one gets out of bed to want to go to work and not look competent or confident in what they do and feel it. And so constantly asking and making sure you're asking how they're feeling, what they're thinking, makes all the difference to engagement. If you're truly
Yeah.
exploring and wanting to understand your people, the leader that you want to show up with, doing those exercises around the assessments of the team, it helps the person understand what they want to the table individually. It helps the leader to know who's at the table. What are some of those skills that we've got around the table? How can we capitalise on those? How can we develop? How can we stretch this work? The psychosocial hazards work that's come in, the legislation, we know that burnout can be just as detrimental as bore out. It's a really interesting one.
Yes.
Is when you've got people who are being stretched, when they're not
Yep.
getting an opportunity, when they're not feeling like they've got a particular purpose or they're not being utilised.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at the biology piece around dysregulation that occurs and the fractures on sense of self, right, when it comes to that confidence and able to understand that and see they're both very similar in damage. So
Well,
yeah,
that's the definition of the hazard of job demands, isn't it? In terms of, you can have too high job demands or too low job demands, and
yeah,
yes, both equally so detrimental for your well-being.
yeah, you got floundering, you got hesitating, you've got stuck, which can be really, really detrimental to the psychological health of someone. Or
Mm.
you've got on without any sort of endpoint. And that's the burnout. There is no endpoint. I'm in a job that I just can't get on top of.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
usually that's underpinned by really good people that want to do a really good job.
Yeah. 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 Who
And
keeps striving and striving and striving.
you really want these people in your business. You don't want to let these people go, but
No.
you will see them not performing. They will
Yeah.
not be able to perform because once you're dysregulated, you are out of your flow. You're out of that parasympathetic nervous system, which allows us to actually tap into our executive functioning effectively. And so you can just imagine the mayhem for them. They're trying to do their job, but their whole biology is just fighting against them.
Yeah. They're probably not sleeping,
Well,
you
they,
know,
yeah.
eating foods that aren't helping. It's a vicious cycle.
It is, and that's where the important, we talk about connection leadership, but for the leader, I think great leadership starts from within the leader. They have to be able to understand themselves and their ability to regulate and their ability to show up to enable them to be connected leaders.
I
Connect
hope.
directly with a dysregulated person. They don't even have the energy to connect. That's what
Yeah.
it comes down to. It's not whether
Yeah.
they want to or not. They
Yeah.
just don't have the energy to connect.
And I think it comes back to what you said at the very beginning, well, when we were having the pre-chat around this importance of intention. And I think if the leader has that intention to begin with, they're going to do the assessments to get to learn who their people are. They're going to do the work to make sure that they're in a great position to lead with connection. And start with that intention, and those behaviors will follow.
If they are clear in their intention and how they want to lead as a leader and they've done the work even on themselves from a values point of view, then that consistency piece will be a lot more consciously easier to show up every day, repeating the same behaviours because it's aligned to their values and authentic with where they genuinely want to sit as a leader.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So when leaders get it wrong, what doesn't work? What breeds disconnection?
I think
Hmm.
first and foremost, leaders who just don't make the time to connect, leaders who don't listen, so they truly don't understand the landscape for their people, leaders who can be quite dismissive. So they may be making the time and they may be listening, but they're invalidating or they're dismissive or they could be gaslighting. So the person's trying to have an honest, open conversation and all of a sudden they walk away feeling like they're the problem. And I think a good conversation never walks away with either party feeling like a problem. It's an exploratory conversation to say, this is the challenge. What can we do differently to get a different result? No one's the problem. It's about the challenge. And I think that is a real red flag if people are walking away feeling like they're the problem and not being offered any sort of development, support, ideas, solutions, that sort of thing.
What do you think encourages people to gaslight? Because I kind of believe that people don't intentionally want to gaslight other people. But what do you think, yeah, influences that behavior from a leader?
Well, I don't think anyone gets out of bed to be a bad leader. I truly
No.
believe that. Okay. I think people have a lot going on for them. I think sometimes gaslighting is a really funny one. We use it a lot and we throw it around in the community a lot, but it sometimes comes from a reactive place when somebody does not necessarily know how to, even, at the very minimal, do self reflection. Self reflection for some individuals is extremely threatening. For them to put their hand up and go, I brought this to the table, this is on me. That is
Yeah.
extremely threatening. Individuals do not know how to do it. And because it just means so much to that fractured sense of self. When you think about mindset, fixed mindset versus growth mindset, one of the real key attributes of a fixed mindset is that success and fail. Everything in their world is looked at as success or failure. So that sort of individual who's very much rooted in a fixed mindset would rather not try something than fail, right? And so what you're seeing is someone who external world is very closely validating their sense of self internally. That is the sort of individual who you will find conversations around how to do things better when something hasn't gone to plan quite difficult, because there will be that real attachment to sense of self. And that is very uncomfortable, let's say. Whereas in comparison to growth mindset, that attachment isn't really there. So if something doesn't go to plan, it's not about them being a failure. It's not about them not necessarily having the key skills or competencies. Or if it is, they'll go, hey, I need to go and do that certification. I need to go get a mentor. I need to do
Yeah.
something real different because this is not working out.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
not about them going, I'm such a failure. I can't come out of my shell anymore.
Mm.
So
Yep.
there's so many things going into that.
Mm.
I mean, that's just a couple. There's, of course, so many other things. Someone who has neurodiversity or that ADHD, they've got already a very inbuilt sensitivity to rejection. And so you start to see some of that coming out.
Yeah. And we can learn, that's the great thing is we can learn those skills if we have that growth mindset, if we have that aptitude for challenge and for learning and growing, we can learn these human skills.
The trick is, how do you embed this? How do you play with this?
Yeah.
Because that's the hard bit, embedding it. Leadership training is great to understand different contexts and different models and open yourself up to different ways of maybe seeing it. But really changing behavior is difficult. You've got to embed it. You've got to be uncomfortable and try to be comfortable when you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That is the hard bit for most people. They
Yeah.
just revert back to what they know. And I suppose that's where coaching comes into it, and understanding that person that you want to have guiding you. You can do it, but you just need to kind of keep that curious mindset.
Yeah. And I think you keep coming back to the fact that it is uncomfortable when you are having these conversations, or if you're leading and it's quite apparent that whatever you're doing is not working, or it is uncomfortable and painful. And as humans, we don't love to feel that. So we go into those antisocial kind of behaviors like gaslighting, was what we were talking about, in order for us, or defensive behavior, in order for us not to feel the pain, but actually it does create those little relational blocks in the relational system at work. I think it's not because we want to cause issues, it's because we don't want to feel pain. And that is understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But it's really about taking success and failure as words, good and bad, and throwing them out.
Yep.
That's
And I
all.
think if you can have that in your team and that philosophy of, well, now we know how to do it better next time, then they have permission to try and have a growth mindset as well. So you, as the leader, really embodying the growth mindset gives permission for everyone in the team to embody
Yeah,
it as
it's the
well.
little things. It's what did we do
Yeah.
well? What would we do different? And what did we learn? And how do we
Yeah.
share that? So it's actually then learned across the different systems in the organization. You know,
Yeah.
how can we make that something that we can all use to ensure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that's difficult and sometimes that's uneasy. And psychological safety is not all fluffy and warm and just cozy, cozy beanbags the whole time. It's having those tough realizations or those tough conversations seeped in compassion and seeped in this understanding of what can we do better and learning. So I think
Yeah, and as you would probably know in the leadership space as well, the confronting conversations or the difficult conversations comes up time and time and time again, right? Right at the top of the list. I say use the word explore. Because when we go into these conversations truly exploring, straight
yeah,
away our biology gets out of fight and flight. There is nothing worse than going into a conversation with assumptions and predicting that it's not going to turn out well. Straight away, your biology is already in threat mode, in protection mode. And that will affect your body language, that will affect your listening, that will affect the feel that you're giving to this other person, that will affect everything. That will affect the outcome of that conversation. But if you truly just go inquisitive and exploring and really intent on figuring out what is going on under the iceberg for this person, you can see all the behavior and you can make all your assumptions because you are coming through a lens based on your messaging and your experiences. Don't put that aside and really try to understand what is happening for this person in their world. And I
And it
think
comes back to language, what you said before. It's the language you use.
I love to throw this word out. When you're trying to set these meetings up, I really want to explore this. I really want to explore something with you. Can we meet up later on and we can, have a chat about this? Just straight away, how different is that to your leader going, we need to catch up. There's a few things I've observed. We need to get to the bottom of it. You're kind of like, what? What have you observed?
I
What's
mean,
going on?
that's massive. That is massive. Just simply putting that different word opens up a whole new conversation, a
Whole different
whole different way of, yeah.
feeling, a whole different environment.
If you start with that intention as a leader, you are going to choose the words that are more helpful in the moment, simply because you're aligned with that. Well, this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much for your time. Is there one little practical takeaway that you'd like to share with the listeners in order to lead with connection?
In the workplace, think about setting up rituals in your team. I've worked with teams that set up a ritual that can be a breathing exercise, or you might have a bowl in the middle of the table at the beginning of the week and you get to throw in a post-it note with an idea on it that's going to be discussed on Friday. Rituals are great. Rituals are really good for helping people to create a culture because rituals help sustain a culture. When new people come into that team, it's almost like this is just how we do things around here. So rituals are really good. We've spoken about creating growth mindset. What did we do well? What did we learn? What would we do differently next time? That is underpinning creating growth mindset in your team. And as a leader, you don't always have to know. That's okay, but it's not okay not to find out.
Yeah.
Or at least try to find out the answers, because sometimes it's a great question. And you may not have thought about it yourself. So there's a few little nuggets.
That's amazing. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So if people want more of Natalie, where can they find you and your brilliant work?
So Loon Partners is the business that we have here based in Brisbane. We do a lot of leadership training. We do a lot of psychosocial hazard sort of training and psychological safety training. So we have a program that helps businesses measure. So it's underpinned by measurement. their psychosocial hazards, their level of psychological safety across their businesses. And then it's spread across 12 months where we do a lot of workshops and we work with the leaders to really embed that ability to be psychologically safe, which all the research, no matter what you're looking at, will tell you that psychological safe workplaces are higher performing because it makes sense from our biology. When we're in that space, we can flow better and we're tapping into our executive functioning, which makes us perform better. From a clinic point of view, Revive Psychology is based here in Brisbane, in Bulimba. I do a lot around stress, leadership, as in the workplace, trauma, PTSD, a lot of different things. But I'm very much a coachy point of view because I wear an organisational psychology hat as well as a clinical. So it's just a different approach that most people prefer when it comes to that counselling side of things. So we can get some real nice strategies that just help people change the way that they're doing things in their life.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. And we can change. And I think that's been really highlighted throughout this conversation is we can learn and grow, but sometimes we just need that little support to help hold up that mirror and change those behaviors and attitudes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Natalie. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Natalie. Bye-bye.